The wind howled across the icy plains of Zephyr 9, a frozen alien moon with no mercy. Snow fell in thick, heavy waves, covering everything in white silence. No signs of life, no warmth, no hope. But then, movement. A lone human figure walked through. The storm wrapped in thick survival gear. His name was Reed, a scout from Earth assigned to check old crash sites. His breath turned to ice the moment he exhaled. His boots sank deep into the snow with every step. His scanner blinked. Weak life signs detected. Reed narrowed his eyes and moved faster. A few meters ahead, half buried in snow and metal, lay the wreck of a small alien escape pod. The hull was cracked, the engine blackened from fire. It looked hopeless until he heard it. A sound, very soft, like a whimper. He dropped to his knees and brushed away the snow. Inside the pod, barely visible, was an alien woman, curled around, something small. Her skin was pale violet, her body trembling. Her eyes were open but barely. She was still alive. Hey, stay with me," Reed shouted, pressing a hand to the cold metal wall. The woman blinked slowly. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her arms loosened slightly, and that's when Reed saw it. A baby. Tiny. Fragile. Quiet. Too quiet. Reed didn't hesitate. He crawled into the pod, pulled off his gloves, and gently lifted the infant. The baby's skin was bluish. Its chest moved. Just barely. Reed pulled, opened his jacket and pressed the child to his chest, skin to skin. The baby didn't cry, didn't move. Just breathed slowly, like a flickering flame. The alien woman reached out weakly, her fingers shaking. Her mouth moved again. Reed leaned close. What? What are you trying to say?" Her voice finally came, dry and broken. "Milk. Gone. Too cold." She coughed, her eyes filled with tears. "He's dying." Reed looked at her, then at the baby. "Not today," he said firmly. "I won't let him." Reed worked quickly. He pulled the alien woman out of the hot and carried both her and the child to a nearby cave, marked earlier on his scanner. Inside it was dark but dry. He lit a small fire using his emergency kit and sealed the entrance with a thermal tarp. The temperature began to rise slowly. He wrapped the woman in heating cloths and checked her vitals. Weak but stable. Then he turned to the baby, still barely moving. He crushed a high-calorie protein bar into powder, mixed it with melted snow and dipped his fingers into it. Carefully, he touched the child's lips. The baby licked weakly, swallowed. Reed smiled for the first time that day. "That's it, little one. Keep going." The alien woman opened her eyes again. She watched the human feeding her child, gently and patiently. She had expected death. But this was something else. "Why?" she whispered. Reed looked at her. "Why what? Why help us?" Reed shrugged. "Because no one else is here. Because that baby wants to live. And because I can." She blinked at him, confused. Her people believed humans were dangerous, selfish, violent. But this man was holding her child like it was made of glass. "Your milk really stopped?" Reed asked quietly. She nodded. "The cold shut down my body. I had nothing left." Reed looked down at the baby, still warm against his chest. "Well, I've got a little something left." Hours passed. Night came. The storm outside screamed. Against the rocks, but inside the cave, warmth grew. The baby finally made a sound, a tiny, soft cry. Reed laughed softly. "There you go. Make some noise." The alien woman closed her eyes, tears running down her face. For the first time since the crash, she felt safe. The fire crackled quietly inside the cave. Outside, the wind screamed over the frozen ground of Zephyr 9, but in here, there was warmth. Barely enough to live. Reed sat with his back against the cave wall, the alien baby tucked, tightly against his bare chest under layers of thermal cloth. The baby's soft breaths touched his skin like tiny feathers. Still alive. Still fighting. Beside the fire, the alien woman, Iraxa, lay wrapped in survival blankets. Her violet skin had lost its frost, but her body still trembled. Her energy was low. She stared into the flames, eyes empty. Reed noticed. "You okay?" he asked softly. She didn't answer. Reed checked the baby again. "He's doing better. Stronger breathing. That's a good sign." Iraxa turned her head slowly. "You held him all night?" Reed nodded. "He needed warmth. That's what human babies need too. Skin and heat. Maybe it works the same." She closed her eyes. "No one from my people would have done that. They would have let him go." Reed frowned. "Then your people are idiots." She almost smiled. Hours passed. Reed used his small gear kit to make a crude feeding system. A melted ration bar mixed with water in a tube. He carefully gave the baby a few drops at a time. The child sucked weakly. "That's it, little fighter," Reed whispered. Iraxa watched everything, her eyes wide. "You made food for him? From human supplies?" she asked. "Not perfect," Reed said, "but it's something. If we can keep him going like this, maybe long enough until rescue comes." She sat up slightly. "Why do you keep saying, 'we'?" Reed glanced at her. "Because you're still his mother." Her lips trembled. "I can't feed him, I failed. My milk dried when the cold hit. I felt it happen, the shame, but it's worse than death." Reed was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Back on Earth, people say something when it gets really hard. Just survive today. Not forever. Not for years. Just get through today." Iraxa looked into the fire. "That's what you're doing?" Nodded. "Me and him, and you." Later that day, Reed checked the cave's entrance. The storm had calmed slightly. The sun broke through the gray sky in thin beams of pale light. He looked over his shoulder. Iraxa had fallen asleep. The baby now lay curled on her chest. She had pulled him close, skin to skin. He watched her gently place a hand over his back. Her glow, dim but present, pulsed beneath her fingers. Something had changed. When she woke up, Iraxa looked at him. "My body tried again," she said softly. "I felt a pulse, a little warmth inside. It might come back." Reed nodded. "That's good." She stared at him for a moment. "I never thought I would say this to a human," she whispered, "but thank you." He chuckled. "You're welcome." Then she added, "You didn't just keep him alive. You kept me from giving up." That night, the cold returned hard. The fire was dying. Reed fed the last of his energy capsules into the heater. "I can run outside and try to find dry moss," he said. "No," Iraxa said firmly. "You leave the baby. He might slip again." Reed looked at her. "Then what do we do?" She sat up, removed the top layer of her blanket, and crawled closer. To the fire, she lifted her arm. "Lie close," she said. Reed blinked. "What?" "Your warmth. Mine. Combined. Maybe we survive till sunrise." Reed hesitated, then nodded. He lay beside her, the baby between them. No shame, no awkwardness, just warmth, just flesh and fire, and hope. The storm outside howled, but inside, for one night, a mother, a child, and a stranger from another world became something more. The storm ended 2 days later. The sky turned pale blue. Snow stopped falling. For the first time in many days, light entered the cave. Inside, the fire had turned to soft coals. Reed sat awake, his back against the wall, arms cradling the baby. The child was stronger now. Its chest rose steadily. Its eyes opened sometimes. It even gripped his finger once. Beside him, Iraxa slept. Not in pain. Not trembling. Just asleep. She was healing. When she finally opened her eyes, they were clearer. She sat up slowly, pressing her palm to the wall for balance. Her body ached, but her mind felt sharper. She looked at Reed. "He's still alive?" Reed nodded. "He's a fighter. Got that from you." Her lips moved, almost forming a smile. But then her face changed. A shadow passed behind her eyes. She closed them tight. Her breathing quickened. Reed noticed. "You okay?" Iraxa shook her head. "Something's coming back. Memory." She leaned back, staring at the ceiling of the cave. "My ship was attacked. I was part of a medical escort, a refugee group. There were children, so many." Reed listened quietly, not interrupting. "We were hit mid-atmosphere. Engines failed. We lost gravity. I grabbed the nearest child pod and sealed it with my DNA. I didn't even know which baby it was." Her voice cracked. "I tried to reach the escape bay. There was fire everywhere. I remember screaming. Then, cold, darkness." She looked down at her hands. "I woke up in that pod. With him. Somehow, I'd survived. But my body was shutting down. I couldn't feed him. I couldn't speak. I thought it would be better to let death come quietly." Reed placed the baby gently into her arms. "I'm glad it didn't." Iraxa held the baby close. He made a soft noise, a gentle sigh. For a moment she didn't speak. Her arms wrapped tighter around him. Then she whispered, "I used to be a mid-level medical officer. Not a soldier, not a leader. Just someone who watched over the young." She blinked, her eyes watering. "My people don't value care. They value strength, combat, obedience. I was always told I was weak." Reed raised an eyebrow. "They told you that?" She nodded. "Even when I carried this child to safety, I could still hear them in my mind. She's soft. She's not fit to protect." Reed shook his head. "They were wrong." She looked at him. "No," he said softly. "Anyone who survives a crash shields a child with her body and still breathes in a frozen hell like this? That's not weakness. That's courage." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why are you like this?" she whispered. "You're human. We were taught your kind were violent, selfish, cold." Reed chuckled softly. "We can be. But you're not. Not today." That afternoon, Iraxa stood for the first time without help. Her legs shook, but she took 3 full steps. The baby rested in a sling Reed had made from scraps of thermal cloth. Iraxa adjusted it herself now, keeping the child close to her chest. Reed built a new fire near the front of the cave. The air had warmed slightly. It was safe to open the entrance. As light poured in, Iraxa stepped outside and stood in the snow. She closed her eyes. The wind touched her skin. She didn't fall. She came back inside, sat near Reed, and looked him in the eye. "I remember something else," she said. "What is it?" "Before the ship went down." There was a voice. A male, commander. He said, "Leave the weak ones behind, save who you can." They chose to save the strong. They left the pods behind. Reed's jaw tightened. "They left you," he said. "Yes, but you survived anyway," he added. She looked at him. "No, we did." That night, the baby made a new sound, a soft laugh. Iraxa gasped. "That's his first real sound since the crash." Reed smiled. "Told you. Fighter." She looked at the baby, then at the human beside her. In the middle of a dead world, something was alive. Not just the child. Trust, hope, and a new memory. One worth keeping. Night returned. The snow outside had slowed, but the temperature dropped again. Cold crept through the cracks in the cave wall. The fire burned low. The wind whistled like something alive. Inside, Reed lay half awake, his arm resting near the baby's sling. Iraxa sat upright beside them, gently rocking the child, whispering in a language Reed didn't understand. The baby had stopped crying. He slept now, peacefully. But Iraxa's eyes were locked on the cave entrance. She didn't know why. Something felt wrong. It started with a low sound, so deep it vibrated through the rocks. Reed sat up instantly. "You hear that?" he asked. Iraxa nodded slowly. "Yes." She reached down, placing her fingers against the cave floor. Her alien skin lit up faintly. She frowned. Something's moving. Heavy, slow, close. Reed stood, grabbed his tool bag, and pulled out the only weapon he had, a carbon blade multi-tool. Not much, but better than nothing. The growl came again. Then, a loud crunch of snow. Something big was outside. Iraxa backed up quickly, pressing the baby to her chest. "What kind of creature survives this cold?" Reed checked the entrance. "I don't know, but it's coming straight for us." Suddenly, boom! The tarp covering the cave entrance exploded inward. A shape filled the opening, twice the size of any human, covered in thick gray fur, long claws, glowing yellow eyes. Reed stepped forward, standing between it and Iraxa. The creature sniffed the air, its eyes locked on the baby. "It smells weakness," Iraxa whispered. "The child." Reed didn't wait. He grabbed a burning stick from the fire and hurled it at the beast. The creature roared in pain as the flame touched its fur, but it didn't run. Instead, it lunged. Reed dove to the side, barely avoiding its claws. The beast slammed into the cave wall, shaking the entire ground. Iraxa screamed and dropped behind a rock shelf, cradling the baby. Reed rolled and grabbed his blade. The creature turned. Its breath steamed in the air like fog. Reed charged. He sliced low, cutting across the beast's leg. It roared again, this time in pain, but it swiped with its arm, catching Reed across the back and knocking him into the wall. Blood splattered onto the snow-covered floor. Iraxa's eyes went wide. She stared at the human, wounded and barely moving. She looked down at her baby and something snapped. She stood, her glow brightened. Her body trembled, but not from fear. From rage. She picked up a sharp metal shard from the wreckage near the cave wall, leftover from her ship's pod. Then she ran, straight at the beast. The creature turned, surprised. Iraxa screamed in her native tongue, words full of fire and fury. She stabbed the shard into the beast's side with both hands. It howled and slammed into the wall, trying to shake her off. Reed, coughing, looked up. He saw her holding on, fighting. She was saving them. He forced himself to stand, grabbed a flaming log and rushed forward. Together they drove the beast toward the entrance. With one final roar, it crashed out into the cold, bleeding and wounded. It didn't come back. Silence returned to the cave. Iraxa dropped the shard and fell to her knees, breathing hard. Reed stumbled over and sat beside her. They looked at each other, exhausted, shaking, but alive. "You fought like hell," Reed whispered. She nodded. "So did you." They both looked at the baby. Still safe. Still asleep. Later, as Reed cleaned the wound on his back, Iraxa sat beside him. She said softly, "In my culture, mothers are only respected if they can fight. I was always told I was too gentle." Reed smiled. "You weren't gentle tonight." She looked at him. "No, I was a mother." They sat in silence for a while. Then Reed asked, "You still think you failed him?" She shook her head slowly. "No, not anymore." She looked at him. "And you?" Reed nodded. "I'd die for him. I'd die for both of you." Her eyes met his, not with fear, with something else, trust, and something that in a warmer world might someday become love. The cave was quiet again. Snow blew gently across the entrance, half covering the blood trail where the beast had fled. Inside, the fire flickered low. It smelled of smoke, iron, and burned fur. Reed sat near the wall, breathing hard. His back hurt from the beast's claw. Blood had dried beneath his shirt, but he didn't complain. Across the cave, Iraxa gently fed the baby with the last drops of makeshift formula, crushed ration bars and snow water. The baby sucked weakly, lips barely moving. Iraxa frowned. "He's slowing again," she said quietly. Reed nodded. "I see it." She rocked the baby gently. "My milk hasn't returned. My body is trying, but it's too slow. He needs more now." Reed stared into the fire. "We're out of food," he said. "No more bars, no more mixes. Even if I go hunt, I'd be gone too long." She looked at him. "Then we lose him." The words hung heavy in the air. Reed looked down at his hands, then up at her. "I have one more idea," he said softly. "It's strange, very human, but it might help." 10 minutes later, Iraxa watched as Reed removed the top layers of his jacket and unwrapped a medical pouch. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Emergency field trick," he said. "We use it on human infants when there's no milk supply in survival zones. I never thought I'd try it for an alien baby." He took out a hydration dropper tube and placed it between his chest and the warm cloth. He added a few spoonfuls of melted ration residue and warmed water, just enough to simulate natural feeding temperature. Then he looked at her. "Hold him. Place him here." Iraxa hesitated. "You want me to?" "I'll keep the dropper warm with my body heat," he said. "It's not perfect, but it mimics rhythm, heartbeat, warmth. Maybe he responds." She stared at him. "You would do this for someone else's child?" Reed smiled faintly. "I stopped seeing him as someone else's a long time ago." Iraxa's hand shook as she moved the baby gently into place. The infant's head rested against Reed's bare chest. The dropper tube touched his lips. For a moment, nothing. Then the baby latched weakly. Drop by drop, the mixture entered his mouth. He swallowed. Again. And again. Tears ran down Iraxa's face. Reed looked at her. "Surprised, I thought you were the tough one," he joked gently. She wiped her cheek. "I was never taught this kind of strength." He shook his head. "Caring for life isn't weakness." She looked at him, voice shaking. "You're giving your warmth, your heartbeat, and the last of your energy. You might collapse." "I'll rest later," Reed whispered. "He feeds now." Hours passed. The baby drank slowly, but steadily. Color returned to his skin. His tiny hand curled around Reed's cloth. Reed leaned back against the cave wall, exhausted. Iraxa watched over them both. She replaced the dropper, adjusted the sling, held the cloth in place, and somewhere in her chest her instinct changed. This wasn't about duty anymore. This was about choice. She had been born into a culture that rejected weakness, that saw motherhood as burden unless the child was strong. But this child had lived because a human had refused to let him die. That kind of will, that kind of protection, was stronger than any weapon. Later, after the child slept again, Iraxa sat beside Reed. She looked at his pale face, tired eyes, the cut across his back. She spoke quietly. "If rescue doesn't come soon, and I must choose who eats and who sleeps." Reed opened one eye. "Choose the baby. Every time." She looked at him. "No, I choose you both." He smiled faintly. "Then I guess we survived together." That night she didn't just sit near him. She leaned against his side, her arm wrapped around the child. Her other hand rested gently over Reed's. In the cold silence of an alien cave, they weren't strangers anymore. They were a family, built not by blood, but by fire, flesh, and choice. 3 days later, the sky cracked open. A deep hum echoed across the snowfields as a sleek alien rescue ship descended from the clouds. Its engines melted the frost beneath it, sending steam into the air. The sound made birds fly and snow tremble. Inside the cave, Reed looked up. They found us. Iraxa didn't speak. She only held the baby closer, pressing him against her chest. His breathing was steady now. his body warmer. His eyes opened when the wind shifted. He was alive. Truly alive. The ship's ramp opened. 3 tall Velnari soldiers stepped out, wearing dark armor and emotionless faces. Behind them, a female medic with glowing eyes scanned the area with a datapad. Iraxa walked forward slowly, child in arms, Reed beside her. When the soldiers saw her alive and standing, they paused. Then one of them stepped forward, frowning. Iraxa, you survived. She said nothing. His eyes shifted to the baby. That infant survived? We assumed it was lost. Reed narrowed his eyes. He almost was. The soldier looked at him like he was dirt. Human, step back. No, Reed said firmly. The soldier raised his voice. You have no claim over that child, return it to its kind. Iraxa's voice cut through the air, calm, cold, sharp. He is with his kind. The only kind that kept him alive. The soldiers stared. What are you saying? I'm saying, Iraxa continued, that while my own people left me to die, this human fought beasts, bled, starved, and gave his own body heat to keep my child breathing. The female medic stepped closer and scanned the baby. Vitals are stable, warmth consistent. Nutrient traces match human ration types, and skin. Contact bonding is strong? The lead soldier's mouth tightened. We don't approve of cross-species imprinting. Iraxa stepped forward, voice rising. You don't have to approve it, you abandoned us. The silence was sharp. She held the baby out slightly, not toward the soldiers, but toward Reed. He held this child to his heart when mine had gone cold. He shared his warmth, his food, his life, when I couldn't, when you wouldn't. Reed looked between them, unsure. But Iraxa wasn't done. If I had followed your orders, this child would be dead, and I'd be a broken mother left to rot in the snow. But I chose to fight, and I chose him to fight with me. The soldiers looked stunned. Finally, one spoke. You would let your child be raised by a human? Iraxa turned to Reed, then back to them. No. I will raise my child with a human. A new silence fell. Not cold this time, just quiet understanding. The medic looked at Reed and nodded once. We'll log this as an unauthorized but successful cross-species survival unit. Temporary custody held under medical grounds. She looked at Iraxa. And you? I don't want to return to my people, she said. Not like this. Not when they treat care as weakness. Reed blinked. You mean? She looked at him. I mean, if your people will have me, I will go with you. The soldiers didn't stop them. They watched as Iraxa stepped into Reed's scout pod, baby in her arms, head high. Reed walked behind her, still limping, still bruised, but smiling. The Wen ship lifted off slowly, turning toward the stars, and as the planet grew smaller below them, Iraxa looked out the window and said, My people left me behind, but maybe that was the only way I could find something better. Reed leaned closer. You didn't just survive. You changed everything. She looked down at the child, who now reached toward the sky through the glass. No, she whispered. We did. The scout pod rose through the thin clouds of Zephyr 9, leaving behind the cold, the snow, and the silence. Inside the ship, Iraxa sat with her baby cradled in her arms. His breathing was calm. His eyes fluttered open, then closed again. Warm. Safe. Reed sat across from her, still tired, bandaged, but alive. Neither of them spoke at first. The quiet wasn't awkward. It was peace. Reed finally broke the silence. You sure about this? Iraxa nodded. My people measured strength by who could fight the hardest, she said softly. But they forgot that keeping someone alive in the cold takes more strength than any weapon. She looked down at her child, then up at Reed. You showed me a different kind of strength. One I want my son to grow up seeing. Reed looked unsure. I'm no hero. Iraxa smiled faintly. You're not supposed to be. You're real. That's more important. The ship passed through orbit. Stars lit the window. Iraxa stood and walked to the glass. She whispered something in her own language. Soft, sacred words. Reed stepped beside her. "What did you say?" She looked at him. "I said goodbye to the version of me that would have died down there. She was lost, weak, alone. I'm not her anymore." Reed nodded. "And what are you now?" She turned to face him. "A mother. A survivor, and maybe something more." 2 days later, they landed at the Earth Alliance outpost on Delvor Station, a neutral base where humans and aliens worked side by side. When Iraxa stepped out holding her baby, everyone stared. But no, one stopped her. Some looked confused, some curious, but most just silent. Reed walked beside her, proudly. At the med center, doctors scanned the baby. He was healthy, stronger than expected. The survival notes shocked them. "You kept him alive using warmth and makeshift feeding systems?" a medic asked. Reed nodded. "It worked." The medic smiled. "It shouldn't have, but it did." Later that night, in their shared quarters, Iraxa stood at the small window, watching the star field. Reed entered with warm cloths and a sleeping pouch. "You're settling in well," he said. "I've been colder and fancier places," she replied. He handed her the pouch. New sleeping spot for the little one. Medical thread layer, Earth Velnari blend. She placed the baby in it gently. He slept instantly. Iraxa sat beside Reed on the bench. "I used to believe being saved meant losing freedom," she said. "But you didn't try to control me. You just stayed and held on." He looked at her. "Would you do it for me, if things were reversed?" She nodded without hesitation. "Now?" Without a thought. They sat in silence. The lights dimmed automatically. Outside, a small moon passed over the station's window. Iraxa looked at him again. Her voice was quieter now. "We came from different worlds, but in that cave, we became something else." Reed smiled. "A team?" She shook her head. "A family." She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small piece of curved metal, the shard she had used to stab the beast. She handed it to him. "What's this?" he asked. "Something sharp. Something broken. Something I used to protect us all," she said. "Now I give it to you, so you always remember the moment we stopped surviving and started fighting together." Reed held it carefully. "I won't forget." She leaned closer. Her hand found his. "We're not just alive," she whispered. "We belong." In that quiet room on a floating station in the stars, a human who refused to let a baby die, an alien mother once left behind, and a child who now had 2 worlds in his blood, found something no one had expected. Not survival, not duty, but love.